Hi, this is Lene Rule, and I'm here today with Lindsay Harris from Medestar Locum Tenens. Lindsay has been working in healthcare staffing for about 10 years. For Medestar, she works with all of their different departments to make sure that everything's flowing properly and to make sure they're as efficient as possible in placing locum tenens candidates. Lindsay is going to share with us the basics of being a locum tenens provider. Lindsay, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. And can you just give us a brief description of what a locum tenens is?
Absolutely. So locum tenens is actually a Latin phrase that roughly means to hold the place of or to substitute for. So a locum tenens provider is a healthcare provider that replaces or holds the place of another provider. So it's someone that is working temporarily at a healthcare facility. Sometimes it is just for a shift. Other times it's long-term, a Monday through Friday or a full-time opportunity, but a contract position.
Okay, cool. And so what are some reasons that a hospital or a medical practice would need a locum tenens?
So there are lots of different reasons that a facility might need coverage from a locum tenens provider. Some of those could include cold and flu season. A lot of times urgent care centers will bring on locum tenens providers to help service the increase in patients that they see during flu season. Another reason might be if a facility is short-staffed. Maybe they lose a provider, or maybe they're even expanding to go into other service lines. They'll use that extra locum tenens coverage.
Yeah, so basically, locum tenens are substituting for physicians, but that doesn't make them any less of a physician. So I think there are a lot of misconceptions about locum tenens. Can you get into that for me?
Absolutely. So there are a lot of clients and even providers that haven't had experience with locums and just assume that locums providers are either people that aren't able to get a permanent position for some reason. Some assume that they might be less qualified, or maybe that they have background issues, and those are all pretty common misconceptions. But the reality of a locums provider is that there are lots of different reasons that people get into locums, and they are just as qualified as somebody that might be working in a permanent opportunity. So some of the reasons that providers choose to do locums over permanent positions could be their desire to get back to the patient care aspect of medicine. We've got a lot of providers that were maybe in private practice and they found themselves just deep in paperwork and deep in the, kind of the policies of things, and they just really want to get back to patient care. So by doing locums, they can just go into work, see the patients, and leave and not kind of be involved in that, the politics of everything. Another big desire is, just being able to experience different patient populations or practice settings. Some people get into locums to have the opportunity to travel the country, live in different cities and different states. Another common misconception is that locums providers are at the end of their career. Maybe they've just retired and they're working locums sort of as the next step, or just to kind of keep active. But we've got lots of providers that are straight out of residency and choose locums as a way to maybe get experience in different settings, or maybe even just try out a different climate than they're used to, or an area, or even just a facility before making that permanent commitment. So locums providers are just as qualified as people in permanent positions.
And do you find that there's a need for locums more so in rural areas of the country, or maybe in places like Florida where, they have an influx of patients during certain times of the year?
There are certainly some states that have those seasonal influxes, and absolutely there are great needs for locum tenens providers in rural areas. Basically any area that might be harder to have somebody or to recruit somebody for full-time, there will be needs for, but there's also locums needs in major metro areas, Dallas, Chicago, San Francisco, any facility that is either understaffed or maybe even they've got a physician on maternity leave, could be using locum tenens coverage. So there are needs in every type of area.
Cool. And I know you said that the assignments can vary, but do you know or can you guess like what the average length of a locum tenens assignment might be?
There's really not an average length. A lot of our clients that we have, so it really depends on the specialty. So if it is shift work, like maybe emergency medicine or urgent care, a lot of those opportunities are going to just be kind of sporadic shifts as the facility needs the coverage, because it's not as important to get somebody in there long term ongoing. So there's a little bit more flexibility in the shifts. But when we get into primary care, like your family medicine, internal medicine, hospitalists, those opportunities tend to be more full-time. A lot of our clients request at least 2 to 3 months of coverage, just so they have that same provider in there as often as possible for the continuity of care. But again, it's we have clients that are looking for just a few shifts or will consider shorter stints as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so what are some steps that a physician would have to take in order to become a locum tenens provider?
So the steps to become a locum tenens provider are pretty easy. The thing that I would suggest providers really take some time and spend some time doing is finding a recruiter that you work well with, and a company that has the opportunities that you are really looking for. The great thing about being a locum tenens provider is that you are a 1099 contractor when working locums, and so you're able to work with multiple companies, but really finding that company that fits well with you is important, and finding that recruiter that you work well with is important. Another thing to focus on is, have your CV up to date. Make sure everything is in month-year format, because that's something that will be requested. And have copies of your certifications, your state licenses, copies of your diploma, just kind of bundled together, because locums firms will need those documents in order to get you approved for their malpractice insurance, and then ultimately to help get you credentialed and privileged with a facility that you work for.
All right. And is there any red tape or things that people should be aware of when they're switching over to locum tenens?
If somebody is trying to make a career change, going out of a permanent opportunity and into just locums as a full-time career, just being kind of aware that when you sign up for a locums contract, that there is the potential to have a cancellation. So if you're signed for a long-term, say you sign up for a 6-month contract, in both our most candidate contracts, most client contracts, they do have the ability to cancel those clauses or cancel those agreements with a specific time frame of notice. So just be flexible in where you would be willing to work if something else should fall through, and just be aware that locums is contract work, and so it isn't as long term as a permanent opportunity. I guess with the exception of government work. We do a lot of government work that will sign for lengthy assignments.
Okay, and so for government work, you mean kind of like working for the VA or something like that?
Absolutely. So I know a lot of locums firms, Medestar is one of them, work with Veterans Affairs facilities, Indian health facilities, and we've got a lot of long-term, ongoing opportunities for providers with those facilities. It's a great opportunity to kind of give back to your country and serve the veterans that have served you.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it sounds like being a locum tenens provider gives you a lot of opportunity to experience new patients and new places. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we end our call today?
Just that, it's always worth giving, looking into locum tenens. You don't have to jump right into it. A lot of our providers actually have their own full-time jobs that they're that they work, regularly, and then they sprinkle in some locum tenens shifts, and that's kind of how a lot of our providers have made the transition to more full-time locums providers instead of their full-time permanent position. So you can start small, take baby steps, and kind of get a feel for locum tenens.
All right. Well, thank you, Lindsay, for sharing with me today, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks so much.